Wow, just wow. Who would have thought a team like Liverpool could perform this low? And they got humiliated by a clinical Atalanta team. No, and a huge surprise. I mean, it's over a year since Liverpool lost at Anfield, and I think as Klopp admitted afterwards, they deserve to lose. They played a pretty bad game. I think not Liverpool necessarily, not Liverpool themselves, but a lot of people in England probably guilty of underestimating Atalanta a little bit. What they've done under Gasperini over the last few years is incredible. The players that they've lost and had to replenish the way he's kept rebuilding that team and kept them in the latter stages of European competitions is actually one of the most underrated managerial jobs in European football at the moment. You can see the way that Liverpool were almost threatened every time they gave the ball away, the way that Atalanta were cutting them open. So yeah, it has been a slightly weird atmosphere around the club, around Liverpool the last few days, obviously with the protest over ticket price and things like that, and Klopp obviously slightly concerned that that was going to feed into performances on the pitch. I don't think that's necessarily what happened tonight. I think they were just outplayed by a better side who had a great night. But I think it just adds to that kind of this sense of chaos and uncertainty around the club at the moment. Sam, was it the case, as Jonathan alluded to there, that Liverpool underestimated Atalanta, and perhaps we all did, that kind of slight Premier League arrogance that we are the best league and therefore Liverpool should go and walk this competition? Yeah, look, there's no doubt that the Premier League has much greater resources than clubs like Atalanta, and even when you look at some of the great Italian teams that are still in the competition like Milan and Roma, Liverpool are still the team that you would fancy. I think the unusual thing about this, and I totally get your point about this misplaced sense of English confidence that sometimes trips up our teams in Europe, but actually Atalanta have been on a really poor run. I mean, I was kind of fascinated as the goals started going in to look at how they were doing, and I think they've only won one of their last 6 league games. So perhaps the arrogance, if indeed there was any arrogance, let's say confidence, wasn't entirely misplaced. As Jonathan mentioned, Liverpool haven't lost at Anfield since February of last year. I mean, that's the astonishing part of this result. They just don't lose games at home, and certainly not that kind of margin. So that's the sort of fascinating part of it, really. I would think that it does feel a bit of an outlier as a result for Liverpool. I mean, they've had such a good season and they're still in it, they're still in the league. I notice a few people saying now that they should give up the second leg, play a second ass, Jamie Carragher said, play a second string and just go all out for the league. I mean, that is a viable argument. I mean, a club of Liverpool's size can't go into a second leg just with no expectation of winning. So I don't think that's something that Klopp will do. But it's an unusual result, and I think these things do happen in a season, and Atalanta's form didn't point to it. But yes, it's really how they recover now, and the game against Palace on Sunday becomes a really big one for them. Nolan, just on Sam's point about Atalanta being on a poor run, very much their eggs are solely in the Europa League basket, aren't they? The same can't be said for Liverpool, who are fighting on numerous fronts. We saw it a little bit with Bayern Munich at Arsenal, didn't we? They're out of the Bundesliga race, realistically. So they're going to fight in these European competitions pretty hard. Liverpool, perhaps all these fixes beginning to catch up with them. Yeah, I think what this underlines is it is so tough competing in all competitions, not just because of the fatigue and the relentless schedule, but also the different kinds of games that you face. You could argue that there isn't really a team like Atalanta who play like Gasperini's Atalanta do in the Premier League. It's almost a kind of unfamiliar test for them, and not just for Liverpool, which is why Atalanta have gone unbeaten in the Europa League this season. A lot of teams have found their style very awkward to counter. Again, I don't think that they will sack off the second leg at all. I mean, it's not like Liverpool don't have a history of overturning 3-goal deficits in major European knockout ties. So there is clearly some history to be emulated there. But yeah, I think it does, as well as going out of the FA Cup, as well as the draw against United at the weekend, losing the lead at the Premier League. And I don't know if it's catching up with them, but I think this is the sort of thing that if you are chasing down 4 competitions, there are going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be times when results tend to pile up against you. And it's how they deal with this kind of adversity. It's how the first 10 minutes go against Crystal Palace. Is there any hangover? Is there any fatigue in the legs? Or do they go at it? Or do they just get back on the horse? Because I think what we've seen from Klopp's Liverpool is they have this incredible ability to put the last result behind them and come back fresh next time. That said, Sam, is Liverpool's Caesar in danger of unraveling? Look, I can see where it's going with the Klopp announcement. And with hindsight, I'm sure people will say, well, if your manager says sort of 4 or 5 months before the end of the season that he's leaving, then you've put yourself in a difficult position. I think from Liverpool's point of view, there was no good time to announce where Klopp was going. Clearly, once they started looking at alternatives, or rather his successor, the news was going to get out. So in that way, they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. They had to make the announcement. But in terms of it unraveling, I think I'd have to remain unconvinced that I think they are. They've always been a kind of quite a volatile side in that respect. The one thing, as I'll go back to the original point, is just the home form has been so reliable. And that's why this is such an unusual result. But no, in terms of unraveling, I don't see that yet. I think as a team, they've come through much more difficult situations, in particular last season, and seem to have steadied the ship. So I would be surprised if that happened.